Okay, Mr. Doug Dillard.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the board. I'm Doug Dillard with Pursley, Freeze and Torgrim Son, and I represent the Atlanta Athletic Club. I've given you a letter that we prepared today. We had the original comp plan that came out back, 2 or 3 months ago, and it called for a certain use of the Heisman Field, which is what we're concerned about. 77 acres. It's across the Medlock Bridge from the athletic club, and it's currently under the current plan. It was shown as a distinctive area that allows to accommodate potential future development. Specifically, the current plan calls for this property to be a mixed-use residential or mixed-use commercial, small-scale commercial, office, and residential in area. Hence, the current plan gives us a significant opportunity for development, which is in accordance with the kinds of uses that you see along Peachtree Parkway and at the intersection of Abbott's Bridge, et cetera. So while we've got a recreational facility across the street, we think that a mix of uses along 141 and Medlock Bridge there would provide the transition that's necessary to go into the Thornhill and Prestwick neighborhoods. It would actually give them some protection from future development. Now, I realize that a few years ago there was a very controversial zoning that came up, and what we're trying to do is to avoid any of that kind of controversy in the future. And the current plan, in addition to calling for a distinctive area, current plan calling for a distinctive area, also calls for the River Estates community area, and they point out that it lacks a public park. And the plan states, and we don't have a problem with this, that should the Atlanta Athletic Club's 75-acre, 77-acre Heisman Field be offered for sale, the city should attempt to purchase the land to preserve the rural nature of the community and provide its residents with a pastoral park. Now, the reason we say that is that we assume that the property is going to be zoned to a category that's consistent with the comprehensive plan. The problem that we've got with the current plan is that it calls for this property to be undeveloped. And your zoning ordinance says that any zoning of the property must be consistent with the recommendations of the plan. So we think that when you first recommended it as a park, we had the same argument. That by showing it as undeveloped, then we're restricted by the plan to not be able to use our property, which is a taking of a variable property right without paying you for it. And that could be advantageous to the city whenever they want to try to buy the property, because we can't do it. We can't use it for anything. Now, it's zoned AG1 now, which gives us the opportunity to use it for 1 acre minimums. But if it's got to remain undeveloped, it doesn't matter what it's zoned. So we submit that we leave the current designation as it is. And while the athletic club is supportive of parks and green space, they're not supportive of policies designed to deflate their private property rights and take it a variable property right. So in light of the balance that the law asks you to do, we suggest that you designate this property for a mixed use, low intensity, or a new zoning or a new land use category that would allow mixed use residential and mixed use commercial. In addition to designating the property for mixed use, low intensity, the property is well suited for that use. Residential and mixed use commercial development, considering the property's prominent location on a heavily traveled road, roadway with surrounding residential land uses with varying densities. So what we have suggested, and you look at the bottom of page 2, is that the River Estates community area lacks a public park. Should the Atlanta Athletic Club wish to develop the club's 75-acre Heisman Field, the city should work with the property owner to balance the owner's private property interests with the city's desire for maintaining its residential character. Because of the property's location along a major thoroughfare and the surrounding residential areas, the use allowing a mixture of residential and commercial uses would be appropriate on this property. So we ask that that be included in the comp plan, that specific language, and that would be on page 126. And there's a side paragraph. You look at, you've got the pictures there on the right side there. You'll see that particular paragraph. Also on page 126, we would suggest that the Atlanta Athletic Club, if they wish to develop the Heisman Field property, the city should consider rezoning the property to a residential and commercial mixed-use zoning district. The burden you have is great. The law gives local governments the right to regulate land use. But what it also requires is that it requires a balance. The law gives us the right to use our property for any lawful purpose. That can be interfered with only through a proper exercise of police power. And that's what y'all are doing in adopting this plan. To be a qualified local government, you got to do this every 10 years. And your zoning ordinance calls for a comp plan, calls for consistency with the plan. So as we look at these uses, we ask that you look at our property with a sense of trying to create balance in light of what's happening along the Medlock Bridge corridor, in light of what's happened in Johns Creek, and in light of what could be a good transitional use between the front gate of our club and the residential nice neighborhoods of Thornhill and Prestwood. We believe that a mixed use of residential and commercial, a little bit of office, could be a very good transition. It would allow for the protection of the property, and it would allow us to maintain our property values. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dillard. Bruce Barfield.
Well, I'm not sure that when you asked me volunteers, it'd be to midnight, working to midnight to volunteer, but thank you for your service. My name is Bruce Barfield, 9030 Old Southwick Pass here in Johns Creek, Georgia. I'm a fifth-generation Atlantan. I've been around a long time here. I've lived in the Johns Creek community for over 22 years. I was living here 10 years before the Johns Creek was even incorporated in 2006. I even started my business here in Johns Creek in 1998, and as luck would have it, it was probably like 200 feet down the road, down here in this building right here in Suite 100. So I just recently sold a piece of that business for $300 million just last year. So it was quite successful. We did well, and it all because of Johns Creek and things that done in this area. So we thank you for that. And I tell you all this just because I want you to know this is where I live, this is where I work, and this is where I play. And what little time I have for leisure, I actually belong to the Atlanta Athletic Club, and I'm the current president of the Atlanta Athletic Club. And the club was founded in 1898, and we moved to the current location in 1967, where we have a little over 500 acres to date. And this club is an important and significant asset to Johns Creek. I mean, you've probably seen the worldwide TV coverage of the golf tournaments that have been played around the world, where you see Johns Creek, Georgia in 2011. It happened in 2014 with the U.S. Amateur, and the most recent Arnold Palmer Cup that we just recently had too. So the people recognize Johns Creek because I think of the asset that the Atlanta Athletic Club provides to the area. And we've also been very good corporate citizens to the city of Johns Creek. We've allowed civic organizations from Johns Creek to use our facilities for lunches and meetings. We've allowed the fire department to use our facilities for training. We've allowed the police department to use our facilities for meetings and award ceremonies. We're members and contributors to the Johns Creek Advantage program. We partner with local community and state agencies when when projects are ongoing around the club vicinity. For instance, the most reuse waterline staging area, we allowed you to use our property at line to actually stage for the equipment and land and the and pipe there. We support other businesses in Johns Creek by allowing them to use our facilities for meetings and lunches and dinners. And I tell you this just to let you know the club values its partnership with Johns Creek. We don't take that lightly. Recent strategy sessions we have with the board, we've actually talked about that. We want to be a good citizen to Johns Creek. It's actually in our vision statement, in our strategy documents. I attended the first meeting in the comprehensive plan meeting in March when I was kind of shocked when I kind of saw the presentation and saw what was being announced with the land that we owned across the street that was is designated. They want to purchase it and make it a park, which not opposed to park, like Doug said. None of us are. What we're opposed to is just the plan that's being the tack that's being taken during this comprehensive plan. The proposed update to the comprehensive plan severely damages our club's future development rights. And nothing has changed with this property or the surrounding area to justify this change. And we are prepared to take whatever measures are necessary to fight this change because it substantially devalues our asset that we've held for over 40 years. We have other board members here. We've got the current GM of the club here represented, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Barfield. Justin Hester.
Good evening. My name is Justin Hester, and first, thank you all for staying as late as y'all have to get to this topic. I am not a resident of Johns Creek. I live across the river in downtown Norcross, but I am a member. Oh, thank you. Can y'all hear me now? I live in Norcross, but I have been a member of the athletic club for about 20 years now, and I'm a current member of the board of directors. I'm here just to reiterate what both Bruce and Doug have said. I'm an adoption attorney. I live and work in downtown Norcross, but I cross that river an awful lot and spend a lot of time in Johns Creek. We're very supportive of Johns Creek, both me and my family. We eat here. We play here. We're business supporters of Johns Creek, and all of that is because we are members of the athletic club. I reiterate their comments that we've been good citizens of this county. I believe that it was mentioned earlier that 21,000 folks are employed in Johns Creek. Of those, 500 full-time, and seasonally, many more are employees of the athletic club. So 1 out of 40 that come into Johns Creek or live and work in Johns Creek are working at the Atlanta Athletic Club. I don't think that's an insignificant number. I agree with again with Bruce and Doug, and as our other board members will share, that we consider the redesignation per the new comprehensive plan to be to have the potential to severely devalue an asset that we think is very important. And we would just ask that that this commission consider maintaining it as is and allowing for the plan to continue to look forward towards potential mixed-use residential or commercial on Heisman Field. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill McClendon. I need a card deck.
Very late good evening. I'm Bill McClendon. I live at 1025 Downing Street, which is in Country Club of the South, and have been a resident there and in this area for now almost 30 years and 45 years total in Atlanta. So I've seen Atlanta change. I've seen Johns Creek change. I'm proud to be a resident of Johns Creek at this point in time. I'm here tonight representing, as previous gentleman, the Atlanta Athletic Club. I currently sit on the board of directors there and have been a member for over 20 years. And I also, in addition to living and spending time here at the club, I am also very active in community affairs, and as I say, I volunteer and I worship in this community as well. So I take with great pride what takes place in this community. But here I'm representing the Atlanta Athletic Club today. And in the interest of time, I'm going to be very brief, since most of the comments that I had intended to say have already been said, and that is that we would respectfully request that the land across from the Atlanta Athletic Club be designated as it is currently in the comp plan and not changed as has been designated or proposed in the new comp plan that's being considered. Again, as has been said, we've owned that land for over 50 years. We would like to see the value that has appreciated during that period of time fulfilled in one way or the other. And we also believe that it would be a good transition from our club in the front gate to Crestwick and Thornhill if at some point in time that land could be developed into residential, maybe something similar to what was considered tonight, a over 55 residential community with green space, park space, office, residential, restaurants, which is what the current comp plan calls for. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate your commitment to the community, and please consider our request. Thank you.
Brad Coolin, how do you say that? No kidding.
No kidding.
Okay.
Nobody gets that one right.
But I tried.
Thanks for trying. I'm Brad Keene. I'm at 330 Marshy Point in Johns Creek, resident, member of the Atlanta Athletic Club's board of directors, and I'm honored to be in front of you guys tonight. And I'm honored that Doug and Bruce asked me to come up and speak with you guys. I love Johns Creek. I've raised my kids, 4 kids through Johns Creek. They're off to college now, and kind of weird being an empty nester in Johns Creek. But I want to, I guess, echo the same thing that you've heard from the other members of the athletic club. I have been going out to the athletic club for 50 years of my life. My dad will celebrate his 50-year membership of the athletic club this year, and so as a little tyke, I was out there as a growing up and sort of growing into a man out there. We've had that property across the street. I hate to hear things when you say, when you had talked earlier about the rush to develop. The athletic club's had that asset that sat there for a long time. It's a beautiful piece of property. I feel like I'm the opposite of rush to develop. I think we've got just a beautiful piece of property there, and I hate to rush to develop anything, and I don't think anybody should be forced to rush to develop. Ms. Sanders, you had talked about your developing 10 years ago this comprehensive plan. I think the comprehensive plan, I now hear what you go through. It's intense having to set some kind of schedule through the whole city, but I don't see a need to change the comprehensive plan. You said a lot of work went into it 10 years ago, and I just don't see why all of a sudden arbitrarily somebody's coming in to change that comprehensive plan. I'm here just to basically, for the Atlanta Athletic Club, for the support of the community that we have and the love of Johns Creek, but also to protect our asset. I don't feel like there's a need to change the comprehensive plan, and I hope you guys will consider that. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. King. Clay Massey.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Clay Massey. I'm with the law firm of Olson & Byrd in Atlanta. We are the general legal counsel for the club, and the club wants to have a collaborative relationship in this process of planning the comprehensive plan, but I want to emphasize how serious the club's opposition to this future land use designation of the Heisman Field property is. While we say that, and we mean that we would be fine with a park across the street, an effort to manipulate the comprehensive plan and the future land use map in a way to enable the city to acquire the property at a lower value is not a proper exercise of the planning function. And it is not something that the club will stand by and let happen. We have retained Doug Dillard, who's spoken tonight, probably the most experienced and respected land use attorney in the state of Georgia. And we do intend to assert our rights and to protect our interests, constitutional interests, in the property. Now, it's within this commission's purview, it's its responsibility to make a decision on a recommendation that has the city's planning interests in mind, but also the interests, the constitutional interests of landowners within the city limits. A designation of property as undeveloped as a future land use is not a future land use designation. It is a pure restriction, if it has any meaning, that constitutes a certain taking without any compensation to the landowner. We ask that the commission make the right decision that's well-founded in keeping a designation for the future land use of this property that's consistent with its current future land use designation, that considers the legality of the decision, and that considers just proper planning given where this is in relation to a commercial intersection where there should be natural transition from a lower density residential to a commercial use, rather than make a decision on a recommendation that is most certainly going to lead to contention, likely litigation, and expense. So we and I encourage the commission to recommend a future land use designation for this property that is a mixed use, low intensity future land use designation that matches the current future land use designation. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't want to see the athletic club be designated mixed. I want it to remain Ag 1, in my opinion, because I think that that is what the intention of the CAC was. So does anyone have a motion or comment?
I'll make a motion.
Well, I do have a question, though. So if we're talking about the athletic club, sorry, if we're talking about the athletic club and we're going to make a motion, are we making a motion in favor of passing with the, where it is currently, with such opposition, I think, have we had really discussion about should we or can we at this point make an amendment to that if we feel strongly that that it should be left in the current state? I mean, can we do that? I mean, I don't know if we can or not.
What we need to determine amongst ourselves here is the current state. It's AG1 now.
Correct.
Okay, and the current comp plan says mixed use with residential.
No, the
Judy,
current
can you
comp-
just put your mic on so everybody can hear the
No, the
discussion?
current
Sorry.
comp plan identifies it as a distinctive area.
It's a distinct right.
Right, and
It's
so
that
you could-
transitional,
yeah,
that
that-
bad word.
Right, and we removed that from all areas of the plan. And to keep it in one area, because a group of people who happen to represent one entity seems short-sighted.
Right, but we're not changing the AG1 zoning
No,
tonight.
we said we were keeping it AG1.
Right.
So can I make again, not to get zoning and land use mixed up, but, again, this is land use, not zoning. And so I think what you're referring to, Commissioner Sanders, is that sort of a fallback recommendation of the CAC was that if it got developed, it would get developed as residential, and that residential would be in context with the surrounding residential, which happens to be 1 unit per acre in river estates. And I think what I heard from the property owners and the board of the AAC is that they obviously disagree. They would like to keep it as it's currently designated, with or without distinctive designation. I believe their recommendation to you is that they feel that a higher level of development is desired in some form of mixed uses. And so I think, if I understand understand Ruth made the recommendation that she thought that we should support their desires. So I think you, as a board, need to discuss among yourselves what you're going to ask us or what you're going to formally recommend as your position on that item.
Right.
Okay, well, so I guess all I can give you is my opinion, and that would be that it remains zoned what is surrounding it, or not zoned, but remains what's surrounding it, which is 1 unit per acre, and just what's in the River Estates character area, and we've removed the distinctive part.
And my recommendation is that anything that limits one's opportunity to maximize the value that they have placed in the property, particularly over a 50-year period of time, I would tend to agree with that recommendation that would then support those that are seeking to maximize the value of their asset.
I agree.
You want to share your thoughts?
So I won't support that.
So, may I?
Yes.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, you can make a motion. Or?
Well, no, I'm not going to, I'm just going to share my opinion.
Okay.
It's a piece of property that's been that way for over 50 years. When I look at a comp plan and what it says the piece of land could be or could not be, it still has to go through the zoning process. And when you talk about the potential value of land, the value is only what somebody's going to pay you for that piece of property or whatever item you're going to sell. So while, yes, I don't like to necessarily limit, I look at the previous zoning case and how the community came out and said, no, that is not what we want here. You know, it's one of those, I can see both sides of the coin. So at this time, I'm glad I'm not seated on council to have to make that final recommendation, whether or not to support it. But I don't know that I could support seeing it as anything commercially developed at a density higher than 1 unit per acre.
Right. And I was involved in the zoning, so I do know how unhappy the residents were in that area about the zoning that came forward for mixed. So I guess because I know that, I was intricately involved in it. Those people aren't here, but they're out there. So,
Julie,
so
can we hear from Commissioner Taylor?
Yeah, how do you feel?
I'm sorry, I don't have anything constructive that I could say or helpful. I'm sorry.
Okay. So our task is to decide how we're going to send this on to a city council. And so does anyone have a motion?
I move that we recommend the council adopt the comp plan with a few strategic changes, including supporting the proposals by the Atlanta Athletic Club regarding Heisman Field, and also recommending that more attention be paid to a short-term work plan that presents a realistic budget.
I second.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? So that didn't pass. Does anyone have another motion? I can't bring motions.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the comp plan as presented with notes to council about the public comment that was heard this evening in regards to the Atlanta Athletic Club property, that they need to really consider what's been stated and brought forward. In the end, it will be their recommendation anyway. But yes, look at the short-term work that Royce brought up as well. That needs to be considered greatly. And I think that's it. Oh, yeah, the traffic for Finley Road, as well as the OC character areas.
So is that a good enough motion, Sharon? Or do we have to be more specific?
Well, you know me, I'd like specificity, but I think the gist of what your basically recommendation as a whole, you're recommending that the document moves forward. You'd like us to incorporate the comments that were made tonight about traffic in Johns Creek North with those changes, as well as the changes that were recommended for OC to take under consideration AAC's request to be designated mixed use as a land use and not undeveloped, and to revise the community work implementation plan so that it's a document that is able to be achieved in 10 years based on what can actually be done in cost.
That sounds great. Thank you.
And to add one more thing is to be clear about how we're going to implement the new zoning documents. So did everybody hear that as a motion? So is there a second? Did anybody want to motion that one?
I made that motion.
Okay. Did anybody second it? Okay. So all those in favor of said motion?
One clarification, if I may. Sorry. One clarification, just as discussion of the motion before we vote. Regarding the athletic club property, Heisman Field, are we saying that we are asking City Council to consider the athletic club's comments?
Yes.
That's all?
That's all.
Well, since the council has the final decision anyway, I understand. Okay.
And in addition, we should make sure that the plan says that it's 77 acres instead of 75. So we have a motion and a second, although it was relatively muddy. I think we all understand it. Is that clear? So all those in favor, raise your hand. Right hand. Opposed?
Well.
That's still kind of nebulous for me.
Yeah.
But it still carried because
Yeah.
three of us.
3-2.
Okay. So with that.